In the year 1483, two boys, one of them a king-in-waiting, were lodged in the most famous fortress in England. They were seen at its windows, playing in its grounds. And then, quietly, they were not. No death was recorded. No funeral was held. Two royal children simply stopped appearing, and more than 500 years later, we still do not know what happened to them. Hello and welcome to Vanished Hours. I'm Isla Hart. Tonight, The Princes in the Tower, perhaps the most famous unsolved disappearance in English history. A contested crown, a powerful uncle, and two boys who vanished from the record, leaving behind a question that has divided people ever since. What really happened, and who was to blame? In the spring of 1483, King Edward IV died suddenly. His heir was his eldest son, also called Edward, a boy of about 12. Until he was old enough to rule, the kingdom would be guided by a protector, the boy's uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. The young king and his little brother, a boy of about 9, were brought to the Tower of London. We picture the Tower as a prison, but in those days it was also a royal palace, the place where kings traditionally waited before their coronation. At first, this was simply where the new king should be. But the coronation never came. Instead, the boys were declared illegitimate. Their parents' marriage, it was suddenly claimed, had never been lawful. That single ruling pushed both children out of the line of succession, and the man next in line was their protector. In the summer of 1483, he was crowned King Richard III. The two boys remained in the tower. For a while they were still glimpsed at the windows in the gardens, and then the glimpses grew rarer and stopped. No announcement was made. They were simply, gradually, gone. Within months, a rumor ran through England and across the sea that the boys had been murdered inside the tower. But it was only that, a rumor. No bodies were shown. No one was charged. The most powerful people in the land said nothing, and the silence itself became part of the mystery. What makes this case so hard is that almost everything we think we know was written down later, much of it by people serving the dynasty that would eventually destroy Richard. Their version is vivid. It may even be true, but it is not proof. So who, if anyone, killed the princes in the tower? The most famous answer points to Richard III himself, with the clearest motive to remove two rivals to his crown. It is the version Shakespeare made unforgettable, but the writers who shaped it worked under his enemies. There are other suspects. A great nobleman and ally of Richard's, who later turned against him, may have acted on his own. Or the boys may have lived longer than we think and been killed by the next king, Henry VII, who had his own reasons to fear them. And there is the strangest possibility of all that one of them survived. Years later, a young man appeared in Europe claiming to be the younger prince, grown up, and gathered real support before he was captured. Was he an imposter or a ghost who turned out to be alive? We still cannot say. Then, almost 2 centuries later, workmen at the tower dug up a box containing the bones of 2 children, buried beneath a staircase. They were assumed to be the lost princes and reburied with honor in Westminster Abbey, where they remain. But those bones have never settled the question. An examination judged the ages roughly right, but could not confirm who they were or even when they died. They have never been tested with modern methods. And so the one piece of physical evidence we have still cannot tell us whether it belongs to the princes at all. What keeps this story alive is that it refuses to resolve. It sits exactly where history is murkiest, between a brutal struggle for a crown and the quiet disappearance of 2 children, with the loudest voices belonging to the people who had the most to gain from a particular version of events. We may never know whether Richard III was a murderer or a man painted as one by his enemies. The boys went into the tower. History simply never tells us how they came out. Thank you for spending this time with me. History never really leaves us, it just waits to be remembered. I'm Isla Hart, and I'll see you in the next one.